Welcome back, everyone. This is Russell. I hope you are all doing well, staying safe and sound. I'm also doing fine, alhamdulillah. Without wasting much time, let's dive straight into today's story. This incident was collected by eerie, though it was originally written by someone else. The story begins with a greeting letter. Assalamu alaikum, Russell Bhai. My name is Irfan Islam Eerie, writing from Rangpur's Ideal Moor. The event I am about to share actually comes from a listener named MD Ismail Hossein Ramim, an HSC examinee. Please forgive any mistakes in writing or choice of words. Ramim introduces himself by saying he lives in Mirpur, Dhaka, 1216. His father is a journalist, and due to his profession, he often stays outside Dhaka. The incident traces back to September 2014, and it all started with his elder sister. The beginning of strange events. Ramim's sister was naturally a little lazy, but recently she had been sleeping excessively. Out of concern, their mother asked her whether she was feeling sick. His sister gave no reply at all. Assuming it might just be fatigue, the mother thought some rest would make her better. But things took a darker turn. Her sister began to lose weight rapidly. She became so weak that even getting out of bed was impossible. One night, while she was sleeping, strange noises came from her room, an eerie, rattling sound. Their mother rushed in and found her daughter trembling violently in her sleep, her body shaking as if she was struggling to breathe. When awakened, the sister explained in terror that a dark, hideous woman had sat on her stomach, pressing down on her throat. Her entire body was drenched in sweat. She told her mother, "If you hadn't come in just now, I think I would have died." Her mother gave her some water, after which she managed to sleep again. Terrifying encounter before dawn. Later that night, just before far prayer, another horrifying incident occurred. From her daughter's room came a scratching noise, like sandpaper dragging against the door, moving up and down. When their mother went to check, the moment she opened the door, an unseen force lifted her into the air. She was dragged towards the balcony and then thrown to the floor with brutal force. The snake in the dim light. In the faint glow of the dim light, their mother witnessed something terrifying. Through a gap in the iron grill of the balcony, a huge snake slipped out and fell to the ground. The moment it hit the floor, it slithered away at great speed. Shocked and horrified, she collapsed unconscious. The next morning, when she regained consciousness, she whispered in fear, "Azrael came for me last night. He came to take me away." Her brother tried to calm her down, saying, "Appa, maybe it was just a dream. Nobody came to take you. Look, we're all here with you." But their mother insisted she had seen something real. Half an hour later, she recounted everything she had experienced that night. Anamika's worsening condition. That very night, a disturbing sound came again from Anamika's room. Everyone rushed inside and found her burning with high fever. Her face, hands, and feet had turned a bluish shade. She was immediately taken to Sohrawardy Medical College Hospital. The doctors there examined her and said gravely, "The patient's condition is extremely critical. She must be admitted to a cabin immediately." For 2 days she received treatment, yet her health showed no improvement. Her body grew weaker, her condition more alarming. The test reports all came back positive, but the doctors were left confused, unable to diagnose what was truly happening. On the 3rd day, her father returned from work outside Dhaka. After discussing with the doctors and seeing no progress, he decided to take Anamika back home to Mirpur. She was discharged and brought home, where she continued resting and taking the prescribed medicines. The horrors of the 3rd night. But on the 3rd night, exactly at midnight, things escalated. From Anamika's room came the sound of a violent struggle. Since Ramim's room was right beside hers, he heard everything clearly. Rushing to the door, he slowly opened it, only to freeze in terror. On Anamika's chest sat a figure that looked exactly like her. The doppelganger was pressing both hands firmly on her throat, strangling her. Ramim was stunned. He couldn't even tell which one was his real sister. As he tried to turn on the light, the figure suddenly leapt at him. He fell hard to the floor, striking his head painfully. Even through the dizziness, He forced himself up and managed to switch on the light. At that very moment, the creature resembling Anamika slipped under the bed, then emerged again and slithered toward the balcony. Before his eyes, it transformed, uncoiling like smoke before taking on the form of a human. Its face was distorted, its eyes completely white with no pupils, only a ghostly haze. Ramam's body ran cold with fear. Terrified, he sprinted to his mother's room, clung to her tightly, and called out for his father. Shaking, he explained everything he had just witnessed. A night of blood and silence. When Ramam and his mother rushed back into Anamika's room, they found her lying unconscious. Blood was streaming from her nose, soaking the bedsheet completely. The terrifying sight left them speechless. The next morning, she was admitted to a private hospital in Danmondi. Her condition was critical, so she was immediately taken to a cabin. Despite continuous treatment, 4 to 5 days passed without any real improvement. At night, her body would shake violently, and a strange rattling sound came from her throat. The doctors prescribed sleeping pills, and eventually she drifted into uneasy sleep. That same night, a hospital cleaner entered the room to tidy up. After glancing at Anamika, he quietly said to her father, "Sir, I think your daughter's problem isn't medical. My father is a spiritual healer. Spending money here will not help. Show her to a proper religious healer. Only then you may see results." His words unsettled the family, but they stayed. The encounter with the stranger. The next day, Anamika was discharged and taken home to Mirpur. The sky was heavy with clouds, and soft rain drizzled down. Stuck in traffic near Assad Gate, their CNG auto rickshaw came to a halt. Out of nowhere, a man approached the vehicle. Addressing Anamika's mother, he said, "My home is in Assam, India. I am a Maulana. Your daughter seems gravely ill, but she can be healed with Ruhani treatment. By Allah's mercy, she will recover. Tell her to perform istikara before making any important decisions in life. It is a duty upon every believer." Saying this, the stranger disappeared into the crowd. Moments later, the traffic signal turned green and the CNG moved on. Unseen forces take hold. As they neared Mirpur 1, Anamika suddenly began to convulse inside the CNG. Her body shook uncontrollably, sending chills through her family. Her mother and brother immediately began reciting the kalima in fear. After 7 or 8 minutes, the trembling stopped. She became somewhat calm and gestured weakly for water. But when they tried to give her a bottle, she couldn't even lift it to her lips. Her body was too frail. Her brother comforted her softly. "Don't worry, we're almost home. Just a little more, Appa." But Anamika remained silent. That night, around 11 p.m., a man known to their uncle visited from Mirpur Bihari camp. After looking at her, he said bluntly, "This is not an illness. The girl is possessed by an evil jinn. You must take her to a spiritual healer or a cabbage." He set down a small mat, performed a brief ritual, and confirmed his words before leaving. The journey to the shrine. The very next day, following the advice of one of their father's friends, Anamika was taken to a shrine in Mirpur. It was their last hope that perhaps a holy place could bring her peace and healing. The warning at the shrine. At the shrine, a woman who practiced spiritual healing examined Anamika carefully. After a while, she shook her head and said, "This girl must be taken to a powerful cabbage or an experienced exorcist. I cannot handle this case. If you want to save her, act quickly. Otherwise, it will be too late and regret will be of no use." That night, things only grew worse. In a trembling voice, Anamika gasped, "I can't breathe. It's so hard to breathe." Her father was terrified at the sight of his daughter's suffering, while her mother broke down in despair. They had already spent so much money, yet her condition only declined further. At midnight, Anamika suddenly began behaving strangely. She grabbed the bedsheet with her teeth and started chewing on it violently. Her eyes turned a deep, blood red. Her mother pulled the cloth away from her mouth, but Anamika growled in a voice that was not her own. "Why did you take it away? I was enjoying it." She frowned, her gaze darting from one corner of the room to another, as though seeing someone unseen. A father's realization. Her father, who already believed in the existence of jinn, turned to her mother and said with conviction, "She is possessed." There is no doubt anymore. The family stayed awake the entire night, sleepless, helpless, and terrified by the unnatural events surrounding their daughter. The arrival of Qari Abdul Qayyum. The following afternoon, a respected religious scholar, Qari Abdul Qayyum, visited their home. After observing Anamika, he said, "Bring her to my house tomorrow. I will explain everything in detail. For now, let me give you some blessed water. Make her drink it twice a day." The next day, true to his word, Qari Sahib recited from the Holy Quran. After a long session, he revealed the truth. A long time ago, at the cremation grounds of Lalbaka's Karachir, a jinn attached itself to her body. When the spirit temporarily leaves her, she feels a little better. But whenever it returns, her body grows weak and sick again. He handed them 2 bottles of river water and some black seed oil, instructing them, "Bathe her with the water. Apply the oil all over her body." The return to health. Following his guidance with faith and patience, the family noticed something extraordinary. Bit by bit, Anamika began to recover. Her strength returned, her face regained color, and her behavior slowly returned to normal. It seemed as though the jinn had finally released her. Closing words. With that, Ismail Hossein Ramim ended his chilling account. We thank him sincerely for sending us this story, and we hope to hear more from him in the future. And to all of you who stayed with us till the end, thank you for listening patiently. Fear returns. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. This is Russell. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Tonight's story was sent to us by Sabita Alam. So without wasting any time, let's begin. Imagine this. Without your knowledge, a strange mystic beggar suddenly appears in your neighborhood. His face so unsettling that just looking at him sends a chill down your spine. They say he can take whatever he desires. But what if such a man became the very curse upon your family? Curious to know how? Let's dive into the story. A letter from Sabita Alam. Assalamu alaikum, Russell Bhai and dear listeners. I hope you are all well and in good health. My name is MD Sabita Alam, writing from the Mymensingh division. Today I will share the story of a man named Shahjahan Ali, a gentleman living in Karachi, Pakistan. I came to know him through our mutual connection, Luna Appa. Without dragging this introduction too long, let me directly present the incident as Shahjahan by himself told me. Please forgive any mistakes in narration. Life in Karachi's Shah Faisal colony. Shahjahan begins. We used to live in Shah Faisal colony, Karachi. Right beside our home ran a railway line. Every morning and evening, the sound of trains echoed clearly into our house. It was a small home where I lived with my mother from the time I was in 6th grade. My father had left us long ago, after marrying someone else. From then on, it was just my mother and me. Our home had a little room that opened to the street, and my mother ran a small grocery shop from there. The earnings from that shop covered our household expenses and my education. After I finished matriculation, I began taking on most of the responsibilities of the shop. With our combined hard work, the store soon became well known in the neighborhood. We sold nearly everything: vegetables, spices, household essentials. Though it was small, my mother was the heart of the business. She wasn't like an ordinary mother. She had a sharp sense of people and knew exactly how to handle customers with both patience and wisdom. The arrival of the beggar. By the time I grew older, my mother even began thinking about arranging my marriage. That's when something unusual happened. In our neighborhood, a mysterious beggar appeared out of nowhere. He would emerge from the side of the railway tracks and go door to door, knocking persistently. He always wore a long black robe, and his presence alone unsettled everyone. The beggar's fearsome appearance. The beggar always came dressed in the same manner. A turban tightly wrapped around his head, a large shawl draped across his shoulders, and a cloth bag hanging by his side. In one hand, he carried a bean instrument, while heavy strings of prayer beads swung around his neck. His complexion was dark, his eyes rimmed heavily with kohl, and his thick, overgrown mustache nearly covered his face. His very presence seemed threatening. If you didn't give him something, it felt like he might cast a curse. He would enter the alley at his usual slow pace, his piercing eyes scanning everyone. When he approached a door, someone would hand him bread, others gave money. But every day at exactly 5 p.m., he would pass through the lane without fail. Whenever he came near our shop, he would stretch out his hand and fix his gaze on my mother. Sometimes he would mutter in a deep voice, "Ronnie, would you like to see the snakes dance today?" He called every woman in the neighborhood Ronnie. My mother always smiled and replied, "I don't have time to watch any snake shows." To this, he would boast, "I have remedies for every poison. I even have control over hearts." Mother would quietly place some food outside the shop window without engaging further. He would then let out a loud, eerie shout, "Who?" and walk on. Sitting beside my mother, I would always ask, "Why does he shout like that? Why doesn't he say Allah's name like other fakirs?" But she would dismiss my curiosity. "It's not our concern. I just give him what he wants and that's it." Over time, his presence became routine. His frightening appearance, his strange ways, eventually we got used to them. A new beginning. Days passed, and by Allah's will, my engagement was arranged. Before marriage, I had never seen my bride-to-be. But the moment she entered our home after the wedding, I was left speechless. Mashallah, my wife Suanna was stunningly beautiful, but beyond her looks, her nature was even more graceful. She was calm, modest, and not the type to go out or mingle with others. I gave her my whole heart. Truly, she felt like a dream come true in my life. The knock on the door. One evening, my mother was feeling unwell, and I was busy repairing our motorbike. The shop had not yet opened, and I was focused on my work. Suddenly, there came a loud knock on the door, sharp and urgent. Suanna said gently, "You continue your work. I'll see who it is." She went to the door and slowed the beggar's wrath. The moment Suanna opened the door, she froze. Her eyes widened in fear before she quickly slammed it shut. I asked, "Who was it?" She whispered, "Some fakir." Surprised, I said, "Maybe he came because the shop was closed." I stood up, ready to fetch something from inside for him, but Suanna stopped me. "Finish your work first. They're used to this. If one door is shut, they'll knock on another. He'll get what he wants elsewhere. He comes every day anyway. You can give him something tomorrow." Her words distracted me just enough, and I went back to my work, thinking nothing more of it. The next day, my mother's condition still hadn't improved, so I had to stay at the shop. From morning onward, the sky was heavy with dark clouds, and a light drizzle continued. Business was slow. Hardly any customers came. All day I waited, feeling an odd heaviness, as though something unusual was about to happen. By afternoon, Suanna appeared in the rain, carrying a plate of food. Her clothes were damp, strands of hair sticking to her face. Watching her, I felt a deep gratitude to Allah for blessing me with such a wife. She set the plate in my hands, but before I could even take a bite, I saw him. From the direction of the railway tracks, the fakir emerged once again. This time, his presence felt darker, more ominous. The closer he came, the harsher his face looked. His coal-lined eyes burned red, his expression twisted in fury. The rain poured harder, lashing like a storm, but he moved steadily toward me, his anger radiating with every step. I quickly handed him all the food from the plate, dropping it into his bag. His voice boomed, deep and menacing. "Yesterday, for the first time, I returned from your house empty-handed." He fixed his terrifying gaze on Suanna, who stood silently behind me. I stammered, "Please, Fakir Bhai, don't be angry. Yesterday my mother was ill." But he ignored my words, his eyes blazing like fire. His voice thundered again. "It was your wife who refused me yesterday." I turned to Suanna in shock. She looked at me strangely, her expression unreadable. The fakir no longer seemed like a wandering beggar. He looked like someone ready to tear apart the world in rage. I couldn't meet his eyes. His face was so fierce that fear took hold of me completely. Then, right before us, he closed his eyes and began to mutter incantations under his breath. From his pocket, he pulled out something small, cupped it tightly in his hand, blew over it, then opened his eyes. Suddenly, he flung the object, his teeth clenched, in Suhana's direction. I spun around instantly, the ominous warning. When I turned, I saw Suanna had shut her eyes tight in fear. Yet strangely, there was nothing there. Whatever the fakir had thrown, it was invisible. We couldn't see a thing. Confused, I glanced back and forth between Suanna and the fakir. Then, in a grave, heavy voice, he muttered, "Now her turn will come." His piercing gaze locked on Suanna, and my chest tightened with unease. I wanted to lash out in anger, but something about him made it impossible. Instead, I said, "He's just a fakir. Every day people give him something. So what if one day he gets nothing? How could he treat us this way?" Hearing this, he suddenly grabbed the food from his bag and threw it to the ground in fury, his voice rising in rage. Without another word, he walked away, his shoulders tense, his presence dark and unsettling. My heart pounded violently. Beads of sweat gathered on my forehead. I turned and found Suanna staring at me, wide-eyed, as though silently asking, "What is happening here?" But how could she know? She wasn't even from this neighborhood. She couldn't understand the hidden weight of the fakir's presence. That evening, I went to my mother, who was still sick with fever, and told her everything. She sighed and said weakly, "Why did you anger him yesterday?" Suanna didn't know, but all these years we never let him leave empty-handed. Whatever little we had, we always gave. Tomorrow, if he comes again, I will explain to him myself that the girl simply didn't understand. Her words were meant to calm me, but deep inside, a nameless dread began to take root. The way the fakir had looked at Suanna, it wasn't ordinary. His gaze told me far more than his words ever could. The fever strikes. That very night, Suhana's condition changed. Out of nowhere, her fever spiked sharply. At first, I thought it was nothing more than seasonal flu. But by midnight, the pain grew unbearable. She clutched her head, groaning in torment. Her face twisted with agony, her skin drained of color. I tried pressing her temples, hoping to ease her suffering, but nothing worked. I gave her medicine, yet it brought no relief. Her cries echoed through the room, and I could do nothing but watch in helpless fear. A night of endless agony. Outside, the weather had turned dreadful. The roads looked like ruins after a storm. With everything in such chaos, I had no idea what to do. All night long, my mother and I sat by Suhana's side. She clutched her head as though it was splitting open, her face pale as if every drop of blood had been drained from her body. Even my mother was shocked. "How can a simple fever be this terrifying?" she whispered. Suanna writhed in pain, unable to find a moment's peace. We tried everything we could, but nothing worked. Her groans carried on through the night, piercing my heart with helplessness. It was only after the far call to prayer that exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted into sleep without us realizing when. By morning, she was calmer, but her eyes still carried the shadow of pain. She wasn't the same Suanna anymore. One night of torment had changed her completely. Even as the fever eased, she remained unervingly silent. My mother kept insisting, "She needs a doctor," but Suanna stubbornly refused to go. Waiting for the fakir. For the first time, my mother herself began waiting for the fakir. She stood by the shop's window, glancing again and again toward the railway line, as if hoping he would appear. But the hours passed. The usual time came and went, and yet no sign of him. That night, Suhana's suffering returned. Her headache struck with renewed ferocity. She began banging her head against the wall in agony. I rushed to restrain her, holding her tightly, while my mother tried to soothe her with prayers. But no matter what we did, her pain only grew worse. The doctor's warning. Desperate, I ran to the local doctor and dragged him back to our house. After examining Suanna, his face turned grim. "This is no ordinary headache," he said firmly. "You must take her to a big hospital immediately." This is something far more serious. He gave her a painkiller injection to ease her suffering, but even he looked uneasy. That's when my mother whispered, her voice trembling, "I think this is because of that fakir who comes to the shop. Otherwise, how could a perfectly healthy girl slip away from our hands like this? It must be his curse." Her words shook me. Deep inside, I too began to believe it. A thought gnawed at me. If only the fakir would appear again, I'd give him whatever he wanted, just to calm his wrath. But that evening, he never came. The disappearance of the fakir. I went door to door in the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen him, but nobody had. For 2 days, the fakir hadn't appeared at any house. It was as if he had simply vanished. With no choice left, we rushed Suanna to a major hospital in Karachi. She was admitted at once. The doctors began their treatment, but suddenly her eyes rolled upward, showing only the whites. Her body convulsed violently, thrashing against the bed. The doctors tried everything within their reach, but no matter what they did, her condition only spiraled further out of control. The cry in the night. Evening approached, shadows lengthening across the ward. My mother, unable to bear the sight, rushed back toward home. Perhaps, just perhaps, the fakir would return, and she could beg for forgiveness herself. But just as she stepped out, Suanna let out a piercing scream that echoed through the hospital halls. The desperate plea. Suhana's scream tore through the hospital halls. "Hurry! He's here. He's coming. Beg him for forgiveness and save my life." The sight of my wife thrashing in pain broke my heart, while my mother-in-law wept like a woman losing her child. I was left frozen, helpless, not knowing what to do. My mother wasted no time. She rushed home, breathless, her heart heavy with despair. Opening the shop's window, she began praying with all her might for the fakir to appear. Dark thoughts stormed through her mind. Was he truly gifted with some otherworldly power? Could it really be his piercing gaze that brought our home to this misery? Had death itself come to stand at our doorstep? The fakir appears. After what felt like an eternity, the clock struck 5 o'clock. And there he was, emerging from the direction of the railway line. My mother's eyes widened with fear. Before he could knock on another door, she called out to him, her voice trembling, "Fakir Sahib, please take whatever you want, but heal my daughter-in-law. Forgive her. Forgive us." The fakir stopped. His presence loomed heavy, his eyes dark and unreadable. One by one, he walked past the houses until finally he stood before our shop window. Mother pleaded again, her voice breaking, "Take whatever you wish, but please, let my daughter-in-law live." Without looking at her, the fakir's deep voice rumbled, "I will take what I desire. Have you truly thought it through, Rani?" Mother clasped her trembling hands. "Yes, only make her well again. Spare her life." The fakir's eyes narrowed. "And where is your daughter-in-law now?" Mother replied softly, "She is at the big hospital." The fakir's voice grew colder. "Then, take me there." The Black Stone. My mother hurried the fakir to the hospital. The moment he laid eyes on Suanna lying in pain, he reached into his shawl and pulled out a small black stone. Handing it to my mother, he instructed in a low, commanding voice, "Place this on her head." Mother did exactly as told. I stood by, my heart pounding, as the stone touched Suhana's forehead. And then, just like that, her breathing steadied. The pain faded from her face. In an instant, she sat upright as though nothing had ever happened. We were stunned. The agony that had tormented her night and day was suddenly gone. Relief flooded through us so strongly that, for a moment, we forgot about the fakir entirely. The disappearance. Overjoyed, I turned to thank him to hand back the stone. But the space where he stood was empty. The fakir was gone, without a sound, without a trace. Startled, I looked down at my hands. The black stone should have been there, but my palms were empty. Had I ever really been holding it? Or had it vanished with him? The questions swirled in my mind, but the joy of seeing Suanna healthy again drowned out my doubts. A fragile peace. We returned home in happiness. My mother cooked Suhana's favorite meal, and Suanna bathed, changed into fresh clothes, and sat with us. She was smiling, alive, healthy, yet her eyes held a quiet unease. When I asked her what troubled her, she whispered, her voice low. In all that pain, all I could see was his face, the fakir's face. No one else, nothing else. Only him. Her words sent a chill down my spine. The relief of her recovery was real, but deep inside, fear lingered. Had the fakir truly healed her? Or had he left behind something far more terrifying? Unanswered questions. Suanna sat quietly, her face still carrying traces of worry. She turned to me and whispered, "Why was it only the fakir's face in my mind? Why did his stone heal me so quickly?" Then she looked at my mother, her voice trembling. "Amma? Who really is this fakir?" Before my mother could reply, the doorbell rang. A young boy stood outside asking, "Will you open the shop? We need some things." Caught up in everything, we had completely forgotten the shop. I stepped out to attend to the customer, while mother went into the kitchen. The tragedy. But when I returned to the room, my world collapsed. Suanna lay sprawled across the bed, her hair in disarray. Blood trickled from her nose. Her body was ice cold to the touch. A scream tore from my throat. My mother rushed in, and together we realized the unthinkable. Suanna was gone. In just a matter of minutes, she had left us forever. Tears streamed down my face endlessly. My mother, already frail, nearly broke apart in grief. Only hours earlier, we had brought her home alive, smiling, hopeful. And now, we were preparing for her funeral. The bitter end. As the arrangements for burial began, I clung to my mother, both of us drowning in sorrow. My eyes burned with tears, vision blurred, unable to comprehend how life had changed so cruelly, so suddenly. The fakir's shadow still loomed in our minds. His black stone, his piercing gaze, his haunting words. None of it could be forgotten. Was it truly healing that he had given her? Or had he claimed something far greater in return? The burial, the funeral was completed, and Suanna was laid to rest. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. At the graveyard, people tried to comfort me, placing hands on my shoulder, whispering words of patience. Slowly, one by one, they left. But I couldn't move. How could I leave her alone here, in the cold earth? I walked a few steps, then stopped. My legs refused to carry me away. Instead, I sank down against a wall hidden among the trees near the graveyard. The night was heavy with silence, the only light being the pale silver glow of the moon spilling across the ground. From where I sat, I could see Suhana's grave clearly. My tear-stained eyes stayed fixed on it, as though staring could somehow bring her back. The return of the fakir. Time passed. The night deepened. The silence was suffocating, until suddenly, I saw a figure moving toward the grave. My heart skipped a beat. Who would come to the graveyard so late at night? I wiped my eyes quickly, squinting into the darkness. And then I saw him, the fakir. My entire body froze. His shadowy figure walked slowly between the other graves, until he stopped directly in front of Suhana's resting place. I watched, trembling, as he turned his head, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It felt as if he was making sure no one else was there. But I was there, hidden, watching, the unthinkable. I held my breath, too afraid to even move. I wanted to stop him, to confront him, to demand what he was doing. But in that very moment, it felt as though something clutched my legs tightly, pinning me to the ground. I stood there, frozen, unable to take a single step. The fakir looked around once more. When he was certain no one else was near, he began digging at Suhana's grave with frightening speed. My heart nearly stopped when I saw him pull her body from the damp soil. He laid her lifeless form on the ground, then carefully covered the grave again, hiding all trace of what he had done. The resurrection. He sat cross-legged beside her body and began chanting in a low, guttural voice. Strange syllables poured from his lips as his hands hovered near her feet. And then it happened. Suhana's body shuddered. Slowly, unnaturally, she began to move. Still wrapped in her burial shroud, she sat upright. A scream rose in my throat, but I swallowed it back, trembling violently. The fakir continued his chants, then pulled the shroud away from her face. Suhana's eyes opened. With a calm, commanding motion, he draped a large black cloak over her shoulders and gestured for her to follow. Without resistance, Suana rose to her feet and, cloaked in darkness, began walking behind him. The final terror. I could only stand there, paralyzed, breathless. As the two figures moved slowly into the night, my mind raced with a single horrifying question. Who was this fakir? A holy man? A sorcerer? A master of jinn? Or something far darker? Something beyond human? He pursued. Questions tore through my mind like lightning. Was he truly a sorcerer? What connection did he have with Suana? Had she really died? Or was I seeing something beyond human comprehension? I had always heard that magic holds no power over the dead. And yet, right before my eyes, Suana, my wife, who we had buried with our own hands, walked, alive, behind the fakir like a shadow-bound servant. Fear gripped me, but in that moment, something stronger than fear took hold. I couldn't just stand by. I began following them, step by step, down the dark road. The fakir walked steadily, one finger raised, signaling Suana to keep pace behind him, and she obeyed, like a pet tethered to her master. The mosque. Soon we reached the entrance of a mosque, and it was there, at that very moment, that courage surged within me. A strange strength filled my chest. Without hesitation, I lunged forward and grabbed Suhana's arm tightly. The fakir spun around, his eyes blazing, but before he could act, I pulled her toward the mosque and screamed for help. The sound of my voice carried inside. Several men in prayer rushed out in alarm. At first, they recoiled in fear at the sight of us, unsure of what was happening. But I didn't let go. Dragging Suana with me, I pushed us both inside the mosque sanctuary. Under the glow of the prayer lamps, worshippers stared in shock as I stumbled in with my wife. Suana trembled under my grip, her face hidden beneath the black cloak the fakir had given her. The men whispered verses of the Quran, their voices filling the air with holy words. And in that moment I saw it, the fakir outside, standing at the mosque gates. His face twisted with rage, but he did not cross the threshold. His eyes burned into mine one last time before he turned, disappearing into the night. The fright in the mosque. The worshippers recoiled when they saw Suana still wrapped in her burial shroud. Fear flashed across their faces. No one dared come closer. My voice cracked as I explained everything, from the fakir's visits to the black stone, to what I had just witnessed in the graveyard. And then, suddenly, a strange sound echoed through the mosque. A hollow, otherworldly vibration that made the lamps flicker. The moment it rang out, Suana collapsed unconscious at my feet. One of the men exclaimed, "Take her to the hospital. Perhaps she was never truly dead. You must have mistaken her." But I shouted back, "If she was alive, then how did the fakir know? What was in that black stone? And how did it vanish from my hands?" The water of life. Among the crowd was an elderly man with a long white beard. Calmly, he recited verses from the Holy Quran, blew over a cup of water, and handed it to me. "Sprinkle this on her. Let her drink a little." I obeyed. Drops of the blessed water touched her lips, and within moments, Suana stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. She sat up, bewildered, her gaze darting around the mosque. When she saw the burial shroud still clinging to her body, she gasped in terror. "What is this? What's happening to me?" Someone quickly fetched women's clothing from a nearby home. After changing, Suana sat beside me, fully conscious. The mystery remains. I asked her desperately, "What happened to you? Do you remember following the fakir?" But Suana shook her head. She remembered nothing. Not the fakir, not the graveyard, nothing but pain and darkness. By morning, news spread like wildfire. A dead girl has come back to life. Neighbors filled the streets, whispering in disbelief. Even the local doctor who had pronounced her dead only hours earlier stood speechless. How could this be? The unanswered question. Suana was alive, but the questions remained unanswered. Who truly was that Fokir? What power did he hold? And what secret was hidden? The truth we couldn't escape. I had no words left. All I knew was that Suanna was alive, sitting right in front of me. My mother explained everything to the neighbors. Together, they went to the graveyard and found the unthinkable. Suhanna's grave was empty from within. Whispers spread among the people. Who was this Fokir? Was he a sorcerer or a being from another world? I remembered his chilling words. I will take what I desire. But what had he truly wanted? To use Suanna for some dark purpose? Or had we all fallen under the spell of a magician's curse? Suhanna's family was shaken to the core. We too lived in fear. Yet, through the prayers of the elders and the strength of our faith, Suanna eventually returned to complete normalcy. She no longer remembered the Fokir, nor did his shadow haunt her thoughts. But me, I could never forget. The vanishing Fokir. No one knew where he came from or where he disappeared to. None of the neighboring streets had ever seen him. He existed only in our alley, like a phantom tied to our lives alone. After this, I never again allowed any Fokir to look at my wife. Soon, we left that neighborhood behind, moving to another place, hoping never to cross paths with such darkness again. To this day, we never saw him again. But even now, one question burns deep inside me. Who was that Fokir? And what did he truly want? Closing narration. And with that, dear listeners, today's chilling tale comes to an end. Thank you for staying with us and listening so attentively. This incident, collected and shared by Samit Alam, truly left us shaken. Imagine, a girl who was not truly dead, yet carried every sign of death itself. Even the doctors were deceived, declaring her lifeless. She was buried, her family in grief, only for the impossible to happen. A mystery beyond imagination. Was she cursed by the Fokir, or trapped between life and death by forces unseen? To this day, we may never know. If you have ever heard or experienced anything like this, do let us know. Your stories help us uncover the hidden corners of the unknown. Until next time, thank you once again for your patience and attention. Stay safe and prepare yourselves, because we will return soon with another story. A new story begins. Assalamu alaikum, Russell. Bye. I won't even ask how you're doing because you are always on the side of good. My name is Himmel. Due to some personal issues, I couldn't come to the studio to share this story myself. That's why I humbly request you to read it on my behalf. We will be deeply grateful. So, without wasting more time, let me take you straight into the incident. Life in Dhaka. I am originally from Barisal, but currently I live in Dhaka, studying at a private university along with my younger brother. For our studies, we rented a flat near the university. This flat had 4 rooms. 2 of them were already occupied by 2 older brothers before we moved in. Once my brother and I joined, the house had 4 people in 4 rooms. Before going into the details of what happened, let me give you a short description of the flat. The house faced south with 2 bedrooms, both attached to bathrooms and balconies. Besides these, there was 1 single room and a small partition room on the opposite side. I stayed alone in the single room, where it all began. The real trouble began about 2 weeks after we moved in. The first incident happened to me personally, and that's where my story starts. One night, around 11 p.m., all 4 of us had dinner together. Afterwards, everyone went back to their rooms to sleep. My room was located right in the middle of the house. The first night, I came into my room, locked the door, and lay down on my bed. After scrolling on my phone for a while, I drifted off to sleep. It must have been around 2:30 in the morning. Not long after, I was startled awake by the sound of a faint knock on my door. Half asleep, I called out, "Who's there? Who is it?" But there was no answer. I tried to brush it off and let sleep take over again, but soon I felt it. Footsteps shuffling right outside my door. My heart pounded as the knocking came again. This time, I jumped up, unlocked the door, and pulled it open, but the corridor was empty. Frustrated, I thought perhaps one of the other 3 was trying to play a prank on me. Annoyed, I shut the door, locked it again, and forced myself to sleep. But all night long, the knocking and the restless noises outside my door never stopped. The second night, the next morning, I confronted my roommates. I asked them directly, who was messing around outside my door last night? But they all denied it. None of them admitted to doing anything. That evening, after dinner, everyone went back to their own rooms as usual. I returned to mine, scrolling through my phone to pass the time. After 2 a.m., the same uneasy feeling crept over me. It was as if someone was standing silently outside my door. Then 2 knocks. Sharp, deliberate. I shouted again. Who's there? Who is it? But there was no reply, only silence. Trying to ignore it, I focused back on my phone. But suddenly, there it was again. 2 hard knocks. This time, I was lying directly on the mattress near the door, the hairy feet. That night, I decided to find out once and for all who was behind these disturbances. Since my mattress was right near the door, I slid slightly to the side and peered out from underneath. In the dim light filtering through the crack, my blood froze. I saw 2 legs, hairy, thick, and shackled with iron chains. I blinked hard, thinking it must be some trick of my tired eyes. Summoning courage, I quickly unlocked and opened the door. The moment it creaked, I heard it. The sound of someone sprinting from one end of the room to the other. But when I looked around, there was no one. Panicked, I rushed to each of my roommates' doors, banging until they woke up. I checked their feet one by one. Normal. No hair, no chains, nothing out of the ordinary. When they asked what had happened, I brushed it off, too shaken to explain. The shadow in the bathroom. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Like every morning, I went to the university. By the time I returned, it was already afternoon. The flat was empty. After lunch, I went to shower. Since my single room didn't have an attached bathroom, I used the one near the bedrooms. That day, the power was out, so the bathroom was cloaked in semi-darkness, lit only faintly by sunlight seeping through the small ventilator. As I turned on the water tap, something caught my eye. On the left wall, above the tiles, there was a strange silhouette. My own shadow stretched there normally, but beside it, another shape appeared. And this one did not belong to me, the creature in the shadow. On the bathroom wall, the outline grew clearer, 2 small, twisted legs, but with oversized feet. Shackles clung tightly to the ankles. Its arms were unnaturally long, ending in sharp, claw-like nails. The face was there, but hollow. There were no eyes. My heart stopped. Nothing was physically in front of me, yet when I reached out hesitantly along the shadow, my hand brushed against something. Something alive. Something covered in coarse hair. A strangled cry escaped my throat. I shouted Allah's name over and over as I bolted out of the bathroom, stumbling into the corridor. Fear unlike anything I had ever felt before gripped my chest. I ran outside the flat and collapsed near the entrance, gasping for air. Soon my brother and roommates returned, and I told them everything. But none of them believed me. They laughed it off as my imagination, a trick of the mind. Even my brother dismissed it. Their disbelief only deepened my sense of helplessness. The midnight horror. That night, the fear still clung to me. I didn't dare lock my door, so I left it slightly open, hoping it would make me feel less trapped. I fell asleep uneasily, but sometime past midnight, my eyes snapped open for no reason. As my gaze drifted toward the doorway, my blood turned to ice. There it stood, that horrifying figure. Its face mangled with wounds, its eyes nothing but empty sockets. Heavy iron shackles bound its body, while thick, matted hair covered its limbs like an animal's. It loomed silently at the door, staring at me with those hollow voids where eyes should have been. The face in the dark. The figure crouched in my doorway, its eyeless face fixed on me with a terrible glare. In a guttural voice, it rasped, "What have you done? Why did you do it?" It began moving toward me. Terror seized my body, and with a scream, I lost consciousness. The morning after, when I finally awoke, the sound of the far azan was echoing from every direction. My face was damp. My brother and the 2 older roommates were sprinkling water over me. Confused and trembling, I asked my brother what had happened. He sighed deeply and said, "Last night, while you were sleeping, I woke up and went to the balcony for a smoke. After finishing, I went into the bathroom. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt something strange. My body felt heavy, like I was sinking. The mirror," he continued. "Do you remember a few days ago? The bathroom mirror cracked? The same place where you cut your finger and it bled." I nodded, the memory rushing back. "Well," he said, his voice shaking. As I leaned over the basin to splash water on my face, I glanced into the mirror, and there, behind me, stood another me, a figure identical to me in every way. His eyes grew wide as he described it. It was my reflection, but its eyes and face were filled with pure savagery. Drool dripped constantly from its mouth, while blood poured from its nose. It stared at me with such violent hatred. I froze. The doppelganger in the mirror. My brother's voice trembled as he described it. Its eyes. There were no eyes, just empty, black sockets. My whole body broke into a cold sweat, but my mouth couldn't form a single word. Then it smiled. A twisted, hideous grin, as if it was mocking me. Shaking, he continued, "I couldn't bear it. I shut my eyes tight and tried to recite Ayatul Kursi, but the terror made the words stumble on my tongue. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe properly. And then, I felt it, a hot breath right against my shoulder. That's when I knew what I saw in the mirror wasn't just a reflection. It was standing directly behind me." He swallowed hard. I kept whispering Allah's name. At that very moment, the call to prayer echoed through the air. And from just behind me, a voice whispered something I couldn't understand before vanishing. "The escape." It was that exact moment, he said, when he heard my scream from the bedroom. Running out of the bathroom, he gathered the others and rushed to me, finding me unconscious on the floor. After that, none of us dared stay in the flat. When we told the landlord, he only shook his head and insisted we leave immediately. By morning, we had packed everything and left for our hometown. Both my brother and I were feverish during the journey, our bodies still weak with fear. Once home, we went to the local mosque. The imam listened quietly, then recited verses from the Quran and gave us blessed water. Slowly, our fevers faded, and our hearts calmed again. The unanswered mystery. To this day, I cannot explain what happened in that house. Was it the cracked mirror that had become a gateway? A jinn bound in chains, haunting us at night? Or something far darker? Something that wore our faces, waiting to replace us? All I know is this: when the azan rang, it fled. But its whisper still lingers in my brother's ears. And even now, sometimes when I glance into a mirror, I wonder, is the reflection really mine? Closing the story. The imam also gave both of us protective amulets. By Allah's mercy, within a short time we regained our health completely. To this day, I still don't know why such a thing happened to us, or what the true reason behind it was. If anyone has knowledge about such matters, perhaps they could explain. We left that flat behind forever and shifted into a new home. Since then, life has been normal again, with no disturbances, no shadows, no whispers in the dark. Thank you, Russell Bai, for giving me the chance to share my story with everyone. Narrator's note. So that was Himmel's terrifying account. An experience that leaves us with more questions than answers. Why did it happen? What was the chained figure, the reflection in the mirror, the whispers in the dark? Sometimes, in the stillness of night, the line between our world and the unseen grows thin. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. And with that, dear listeners, we close tonight's story. Thank you for staying with us till the end. We'll return again, as always, with another tale, breaking through the silence of the night, with the same old tone of fear. A listener's story. I would say I'm a small-time fan of yours, Russell Bai. I've been listening to your programs since back in 2012 on Booth FM. For a while, I stopped, but when you started .com, I became a regular listener again. For a long time, I've been thinking of sending you one of my stories. Somehow, it just never happened until today. Finally, I've managed to record it and share it with you. So, without dragging this on, let me take you directly into the incident. The beginning of the journey. This story is actually about my elder brother. To stay true, I will narrate it exactly in his words. The year was 2014. A group of around 10 to 15 of us traveled to Kumala for some work. From Kumala town, we headed to a village. The village is known as Kingbamisha, quite a famous place in the Kumala region. Though I had no relatives or acquaintances there, the name itself carried a certain reputation. When we arrived, our host arranged a house for us to stay in. That's where we settled. A strange village. Let me describe the village a little. Perhaps those familiar with the area will recognize it. There were 2 mosques in that small village, which struck me as rather unusual. One was 2 mosques, 2 sides. In that village, there were 2 mosques, something I found unusual. One was known as the Awami League Mosque, and the other belonged to the BNP supporters. The house we stayed in was close to the BNP Mosque. That became our base while we worked in the area. The brothers' arrival. Meanwhile, one of our elder brothers from Narayanganj was supposed to join us in Kumala. He called, saying he had left around 7 or 8 in the evening and would probably arrive by midnight. We shared our location with him to make things easier. Occasionally, he updated us on the phone about where he was. Finally, he reached the village and told us he was waiting right near the BNP Mosque. Over the phone he said, "Bye, I've arrived. Come and get me." We replied, "Just wait there. We'll be there soon." But since we were still finishing dinner, we told him to hold on for a little while. The strange disappearance. By the time we got ready and went over to the mosque, our brother was no longer there. Surprised, we called him. Soon after, he came to us in person. But the look on his face was pale and unsettled. Something had clearly happened. And then he began to tell us his side of the story. The woman by the pond. Opposite the mosque stood a pond, and beside it, a small bazaar. From there, a narrow road stretched out toward another village. As my elder brother waited in front of the BNP Mosque, he noticed something unusual. By the edge of the bazaar, a woman stood alone. She wasn't moving, just staring directly at him. My brother had never been to that village before. He didn't know anyone there. So naturally, seeing a lone woman at such a late hour, gazing in his direction, felt strange. Dark thoughts crossed his mind. Why would she be here at this time of night? Could her intentions be bad? Still, he decided to ignore her. He stayed put, trying to convince himself that she was just a passerby. But the woman never looked away. Her eyes remained fixed on him. The call for help. After 5 or 7 minutes of this unsettling silence, the woman suddenly raised her hand and gestured toward him. Then, in a soft voice, she asked, "Bia, can you help me with something?" Her words made his unease grow. His suspicion deepened. Why was a strange woman asking for help in the middle of the night? He thought to himself, if I go near her, what if the villagers see? What if they misunderstand? What if it leads to trouble in a place where I know no one? And so he hesitated. The woman's plea. At first, my brother didn't reply. He tried to ignore her completely. But then the woman spoke again. "Look, I'm stuck here in a bit of trouble. And what you're thinking about me, I'm not that kind of woman." Her words froze him in place. How did she know what he was thinking? He hadn't said a word, yet she seemed to read his mind. That thought alone unsettled him deeply. Still, he reasoned with himself. Maybe she's genuinely in need. Maybe I shouldn't judge so harshly. So, out of basic humanity, he decided to respond. "All right, tell me, what's the problem? How can I help?" A strange request. The woman pointed ahead and said, "See, my house is just a little further up the road, but I can't go alone. I'm too afraid. Someone was supposed to come escort me, but he hasn't arrived. My phone's out of balance and switched off. Could you please walk me there?" My brother hesitated. He didn't know the area, didn't know the people. But then again, she was alone asking for help. How could he refuse? He asked cautiously, "How far is your house?" She smiled faintly and replied, "Just 5 to 10 minutes walk." That seemed reasonable enough. He thought, if it's only a short distance, I can walk her there and then return quickly. With that, he nodded. "All right, let's go." And so, he began walking alongside the strange woman into the dark road beyond the pond, the road through the fields. The woman walked ahead, while my elder brother followed a few steps behind. The road was dim, with almost no lights around. By day, this same path looked breathtaking. Paddy fields stretching on both sides, rows of tall trees lining the road, palm, date, mango, jackfruit, place of beauty in daylight. But at night, that same beauty twisted into something terrifying. The shadows of the trees stretched long and dark, the silence broken only by the sound of footsteps. They kept walking. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 stretched into 15. Finally, after what felt like too long, the woman suddenly turned left and entered a compound through a large gate. The house. Just before stepping inside, she glanced back at him, her head turning sharply, eyes catching his for a brief moment. Until then, everything had seemed normal, but that look unsettled him. Then she disappeared into the house. It was a typical rural homestead. A vast courtyard, with one main house on one side and open empty space on the other 3. My brother thought, well, since I've already brought her this far, I should at least make sure she gets inside safely. And so, he stepped cautiously into the yard, the courtyard. My brother, still unsure, leaned his head slightly through the gate to get a clearer view. Inside, the yard opened wide. 3 rooms stood at the far end, faintly lit by a small bulb hanging in the middle of the courtyard. The dim light revealed everything clearly. All 3 rooms had their doors locked with heavy padlocks. My brother froze. But if she entered just now, how can all the doors still be locked? He reasoned with himself. Maybe she'll open the lock and go inside, switch on the light, and I'll see it from here. That would make sense. But the minutes passed. The rooms remained dark, locked, silent, which meant she hadn't entered any of them. The empty yard. Realizing this, he stepped fully into the compound. The vast courtyard stretched open before him, eerily empty. His eyes scanned every corner, every wall. Nothing. No sign of the woman. No sound of footsteps. No movement. The silence of the place pressed down on him. The more he looked, the more impossible it seemed. She had walked through the gate right in front of his eyes. And now she was gone. The woman reappears. The courtyard stretched wide and silent. One side looked almost like wild brushland, overgrown and shadowy. Another side was empty, leading straight out toward a large, open wetland, like a shallow lake glimmering faintly under the night sky. As my brother's eyes adjusted, he froze. Out in the distance, perhaps 100, maybe 200 meters away, stood the same woman. The same white dress, the same stillness. But now he could see more clearly under the faint moonlight and from the glint of his phone's flash earlier. Her clothing wasn't plain white fabric. It had strange patterns woven into it, designs that looked unfamiliar, unnatural. The impossible. He stared in disbelief. Just moments ago, she had walked through the gate right in front of him. There was no way a person could cover that much distance, across an open field, in less than a minute. Yet there she was, standing far away by the edge of the wetland, her gaze fixed back on him. A chill ran down his spine. Something was wrong. Very wrong. This isn't normal. I've stepped into something I shouldn't have. Fear sank deep into his chest. Without waiting any longer, he pulled out his phone and dialed our number with trembling hands. The return home. We hurried to the road where he had called from. The moment we saw him, we were stunned. His face pale, his body trembling, as though every bit of strength had drained away. We asked, you don't even know this area. How did you end up out there, so far from the mosque? Why did you go that way at this hour? He only muttered, let's get back to the house first. I'll tell you everything there. His voice shook, his words stumbling. His hands and feet were literally trembling. It looked as though sheer terror had taken over him. Once we reached the house, he washed up, tried to calm himself, and had a little food. Only then did he explain everything he had seen. The woman, the house, the impossible distance she covered. We were all shocked into silence. The midnight scream. Afterward, we decided to rest. It was already late, around 2 a.m. by the time he finally lay down. Within an hour, he had fallen into a deep sleep. But sometime between 3 and 4 a.m., a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence. We all bolted upright. Switching on the lights, we saw our elder brother sitting straight up in bed. His eyes wide, his face drenched in sweat, his whole body shaking violently. He looked as if he had just seen death itself. The dream. We rushed to him and asked, "Bai, what happened? Why did you scream?" His breathing was heavy, his face pale. Then, in a shaken voice, he said, "The same woman. The one I told you about. She came into my dream." We were stunned. "What did she say?" He continued. "Her face was exactly the same, exactly as I had seen it with my own eyes. She looked straight at me and said, 'Thank you for walking me to my home. I would have been even happier if you had come a little closer, if you had stepped further inside. Because then, I had a small gift for you. A gift only for you.'" My brother said the woman then gave him a smile. Not a normal smile, but a strange, sinister grin, heavy with an unexplainable terror. That smile burned into his memory, and it was that fear that made him scream awake. The end of the encounter. That was the end of his experience. But the chill of it still lingers. Who was that woman in white? A spirit bound to the wetland? A jinn in disguise? Or something far older, waiting for the right moment to lure someone deeper into her world? Even now, none of us have an answer. So, Russell Bai, that is the story my elder brother shared with us. If you think listeners will enjoy it, please share it with them. And if this story is selected, I have many more to send next time. Until then, everyone stay safe, because sometimes what looks like a human asking for help might be something else entirely. A new clip begins. Assalamu alaikum. Once again, I welcome you all. I am Russell, hoping you are well and safe, standing firmly on the side of good. As for me, I too am well and on that same side. At this moment, I want to take you into yet another story, this time one that was sent to us as an audio clip. So without further delay, let's begin. The listener speaks. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to say thank you for giving me the chance to share. Today, I want to talk about something that happened to me personally. My very first encounter with the unexplained. It's not just about me, but also about my family. So, without dragging it on, let me take you straight to the story. The incident took place in Sakura, in a village I won't name for personal reasons. At that time, the new flat, we found a place to rent. A 4-storied building with 2 flats on each floor, separated by a stairway in the middle. One flat on the left, another on the right. When we moved in, the west side of the 4th floor was complete, while the east side was still under construction. Our landlord made an agreement with us that once the eastern flats were finished, we would shift down to the 2nd floor on that side. So, we settled into the 4th floor as planned. The neighbors' warnings. Soon after, some of the other tenants in the building approached us. They asked strange questions. "Did you know about this flat before moving in? Were you told anything?" Naturally, we asked them, "Why? What's the matter? What are you trying to say?" But no one gave us a direct answer. They never said clearly what the issue was. Instead, they kept dropping hints, speaking in vague, indirect ways, enough to stir curiosity but never enough to explain. My mother especially grew uneasy. Why are they speaking like this? She wondered. What are they hiding about this flat? Still, we tried not to dwell on it too much and continued living as normal. The first signs. But then, exactly 1 week after moving in, the strange events began. The first signs. Exactly 1 week after we moved in, the first strange incident happened, this time with my mother. Late at night, around 1:30 or 2 a.m., she would hear a voice outside the door. Sometimes it sounded like me, sometimes like my younger brother, calling softly, "Amma, open the door." Along with the voice came 2 knocks on the door. Startled, my mother would rush to open it. But each time she checked, the corridor outside was empty. And when she peered into our rooms, she always found us fast asleep in bed. At first, she convinced herself it was just her imagination. Maybe she was dreaming lightly, or maybe her mind was playing tricks. But then, one night, her doubt shattered. The voice of the teacher. Again, around 2:30 a.m., the knocking came. This time, however, the voice outside wasn't ours. It was the voice of my Quran teacher, the Hujr I used to study Arabic with. "Appa, open the door." The sound was so clear, so familiar, that my father, who was sleeping beside my mother, woke up too. Half asleep, my mother got up quickly, heading toward the main door. "The Hujr is here. I should open it for him," she whispered. But just as she was about to unbolt it, my father called out sharply from behind her. "Where are you going? It's the middle of the night. No Hujr comes to anyone's house at this hour." The truth revealed. My father told my mother, "Look at the clock. Do you see what time it is?" She glanced over. It was 2:30 in the morning. Both of them fell silent, staring at each other. Fear crept in. But my father, not wanting my mother to panic, didn't reveal the full truth that night. It was only the next morning, after far prayer, that he admitted, "I heard it too, the same knocking, and the same voice, exactly like Hujr's, saying, 'Appa, open the door.'" It was clear as day. From that night onward, the knocking and voices continued, sometimes imitating family members, sometimes others they knew. The second incident. Then came another experience. This time it happened to me. One evening, just before the Maghrib Azan, I returned home from outside. After entering, I went to the washroom to freshen up. Inside, a bucket sat beneath the water tap. I moved it aside to wash my feet, then bent down, cupping water into my hands to splash on my face. At that moment, my eyes drifted toward the tiled floor, and what I saw nearly froze my blood. The corpse in the washroom. Lying across the floor was a corpse wrapped in a white shroud. The coffin clung tightly, but the face was exposed. The sockets were empty. No eyes, only hollow darkness. The skin looked shriveled, the mouth slightly open, as if the body itself was still gasping for air. I couldn't move. My entire body broke into goosebumps, and my throat dried up. The sight was so vivid, so real, that even as I'm telling you now, rustle by, I still feel shivers. The grinning corpse. The shrouded figure's face looked grotesque. Skin sagging and melting, its features collapsing into itself. And then it smiled. That corpse-like face, with empty eye sockets and a hideous grin, turned directly toward me. I let out a scream and bolted out of the washroom, heart pounding, legs barely carrying me. My mother rushed over, alarmed. What happened? What's wrong? But I couldn't bring myself to tell her. I didn't want her to be frightened, so I brushed it off, pretending nothing was wrong, trying to convince myself that maybe it had been a trick of the mind. The others speak, but the experiences didn't stop. They grew worse, happening more frequently, until finally we couldn't keep it to ourselves anymore. We started sharing what we had seen and heard with the other tenants of the building. And then the truth slipped out. They said, "We warned you when you first moved in. Didn't you know? Many families have rented that flat before, but none of them ever stayed long. One by one, they all left because of these problems." We were shocked. Who would knowingly move into a flat like this? Of course we didn't know. The landlord's advice. When we confronted the landlord, he only shrugged and said, "Recite some dua and kalam. Lock the house when you leave. That should be enough." But soon, the problem became even bigger. Because when we decided to finally vacate the flat and close it up, the entire building came to know. And that's when things truly escalated. The resistance. When we finally decided to vacate the flat, the rest of the tenants opposed us. They said, "If you lock up that flat and leave, whatever is inside there might spread to the rest of the building. It could start disturbing us all." Because of that fear, they tried to stop us from closing it. But for the safety of my younger brother and my mother, we eventually locked the flat in secret and shifted to the newly finished second-floor unit on the east side. Another family moves in. Around the same time, the opposite flat on the fourth floor, exactly across from the haunted unit we had once occupied, was finally completed. A new family moved in there. It was an auntie with her 2 daughters. Her husband was working abroad, so she lived there alone with the girls. First, everything seemed fine. But then one dawn, something happened to her that still chills us. The mirror at dawn. It was early morning. A light drizzle tapped against the windows, the sky still dim. Auntie woke up, half asleep, to the faint sounds of movement in her room. Through drowsy eyes, she saw her elder daughter standing in front of the mirror, hair loose, brushing and adjusting it, as if getting ready for coaching. Everything seemed normal, at least at first. The silent daughter, still half asleep, Auntie called out, "Are you going to coaching? It's raining outside. Take an umbrella with you." The girl didn't speak. She only nodded silently, hair falling across her face, then kept standing in front of the mirror. Satisfied, Auntie drifted back to sleep. The locked door. A little while later, she suddenly jolted awake. Wait, the girls must have left by now. I should lock the main door. Panicked, she rushed to check, only to find the main door locked from the inside. No one had gone out. Strange. Maybe they didn't go because of the rain. Maybe they're studying in their room, she thought. The second sight. So Auntie went to check on them. Pushing the door open, she saw her elder daughter sitting on a chair, hair loose, draped down her back. The room was dimly lit, but she could clearly see the girl's silhouette. She must be studying, Auntie thought. Without disturbing her, she quietly returned to her own bed. The clock. But as she lay back down, her eyes wandered to the wall clock in her room. The hands read 2:30 a.m. Her heart skipped. What? 2:30 in the night? But I thought it was morning already. She sat up suddenly, fear creeping into her chest. The third clip. All right, listeners, let's not waste time. Here comes our third audio clip for today. The listener speaks. Asterisk. Assalamu alaikum. Rusbai. I hope you are doing well. Of course, you always stand with the side of good. Russell by, when I was younger, I used to listen to But FM a lot, especially whenever I visited my grandmother's house. That's when it became a habit. But after But FM ended, I started following your new work on YouTube, bhut.com. And today, for the very first time, I am recording and sending one of my own stories to you. I truly hope you'll like it, because what I am going to share is not made up. It is entirely true. There's no fiction here, no exaggeration. Before I begin, let me introduce myself. I am speaking from Mymensingh Division, City Corporation Area, Ward Number 11, Acua Hajabari. And finally, I must apologize in advance. Since this is my first time sending something, my speech may carry a bit of local accent or hesitation. I ask for your patience and forgiveness, because this is all new to me. Asterisk. A collection of incidents. Asterisk, Russell by. I actually have several scattered incidents from my life. Recently, I've been listening a lot to your channel and truly enjoying it. Since you always ask for stories, I thought, why not send mine? These may seem small, but they are all true. So today, I've recorded a few of them for you. Asterisk. The first incident. Asterisk, the first one happened in our own home. Our house isn't very big. It's a half-building structure. I often stay up late at night, sometimes even before far, using my computer. That's when I started noticing something strange. From the ceiling, which is made of board panels, I would hear sudden loud noises. It sounded exactly like a bomb blast. A sharp, heavy thud that shook the silence of the night. At first, I thought it must be an electrical issue. Maybe the wiring was loose? But after checking several times, I found no such problem. The noise would come suddenly, stop, then return after a while. Some nights it happened continuously, other nights it would go silent for days before starting again. Even after far prayer, the sound would sometimes still be there. Until today, I haven't been able to figure out what it is. To me, it feels completely abnormal. Asterisk. The unanswered mystery. Asterisk. This strange ceiling sound has been happening for 2 or 3 years now. It stops, then starts again without any clear reason. Until today, I haven't found a proper explanation. If any of you listeners have an idea, I'd be grateful to know. Because to me, it still feels like something beyond normal. Asterisk. The second incident. Asterisk. Now, let me share another story. My maternal grandparents' house is about 10 to 11 kilometers from our home, still within the city corporation area. The place is called Depunia, and further inside, about 6 miles in lies Gagra Union, Ward number 11, Suila Paskimpura. That's where my grandmother lives. Just a couple of days ago, I went there to visit. That night, I was sitting by the pond with 2 of my cousins, Babu and Tamim. We were relaxing on a small bamboo platform, chatting late into the night. In the middle of our conversation, I asked them, "So, I've been listening to a lot of ghost stories lately. What about you two? Have you ever noticed anything strange here?" They laughed and said, "Not really, Bai. We're always busy. Sometimes we hear stories, but nothing serious." But then my cousin Tamim, the elder son of my mama, spoke up. He said, asterisk, Tamim's story. Bai, I don't have a big story, but there is one small incident. And it's true, because I saw it with my own eyes. I leaned in, curious. "All right, tell me then. What happened?" Tamim began. Asterisk, Russell Bai. Let me give you a little background first. My grandfather, actually my maternal grandfather, was a famous Karachir traditional healer. His name was Gadu Malovi. In fact, in nearby villages like Gopalnagar, everyone knew him. He was well respected, very well known in the area. I grew up in that house, in my grandfather's shadow. After he passed away, we shifted fully to my grandmother's home, and I was raised there. Now, about what I experienced myself. Asterisk, the midnight vision. Asterisk, one night I was still very young, maybe in class 2 or 3. I was sleeping in my room, when suddenly around 3 a.m. my eyes opened. I don't know why, but I felt this urge to look outside. When I peeked through the window, I froze. Standing just beyond the yard was a female figure, dressed in white. My heart skipped. Without thinking, I slammed the window shut, pulled the blanket over me, and tried to go back to sleep. But even after closing my eyes, I couldn't shake the fear. Later, when I dared to glance again, I saw another shadow. This time a tall, black figure moving far in the distance. Asterisk, his confession. Tamim admitted to me that these weren't dreams. He had seen them with his own eyes as a child. And he swore, Russell Bai, these were real. Not imagination, not made up. He even told me that his grandfather, during his lifetime, had warned that their home was a place where strange presences often lingered. Echoes of the Karachir. Tamim laughed as he told me, Russell Bai, sometimes people even joke with me, asking if I'll one day learn my grandfather's Kabaraji skills. After all, he left behind shelves of old books and manuscripts on healing and mysticism. He admitted he was too young back then to understand much. But the books, many of them still remain, though no one really knows where they all are now. The environment of their house adds to the fear. It is surrounded by dense trees, ponds, and patches of jungle-like darkness. Coconut trees hang over the water, shadows ripple across the pond, and the old pathways make the entire area feel unsettling. Tamim confessed that living in such an environment, he had seen many strange things. Shadows in the jungle, sudden splashes in the pond as though something invisible had dived in, and eerie noises when he went fishing at the dam late at night. Being a village boy, he brushed it off, but the memories stayed with him. Another cousin's turn. After Tamim finished, his younger brother, Mamet, my other cousin, spoke up. He said, Russell Bai, I also had something happen to me, and this one isn't very old, it happened just recently. In fact, only the day before you arrived at Nanyabari. Bablu's turn. As we sat together in the darkness, I turned to my cousin Bablu, my elder uncle's son. Bablu, what about you? Have you ever seen anything? After all, we know jinn exist. It's written in the Quran. Surely you must have experienced something too. He nodded slowly. Yes, Bai, I have. Not always big, dramatic things. But the truth is, most real encounters are small. Small but real. The old toilet. Asterisk, it happened maybe 5, 7, even 10 years ago. Back when we still had the old toilet behind the kitchen, near the edge of the jungle. One night, I went there. As I stepped out, I froze. Beyond the clearing, among the trees, stood a tall, shadowy figure, motionless, watching. I couldn't see its face, only its long, stretched silhouette under the faint light. At the same time, I heard strange noises, like jackals crying out unnaturally. The sound echoed in the still night, sharp and chilling. Asterisk. Other signs. Asterisk. Sometimes, after sunset, an odd smell would drift through the air, like goat skin, burning, pungent and heavy. Once, returning from the market, I even saw a shadow drop suddenly in front of me on the path, like someone had fallen flat, but when I rushed closer, the ground was empty. Asterisk. He shuddered as he spoke. Rustle by, near the pond, especially that one corner. Everyone has stories. People say if you pass by there after dark, something always follows you back. Whispers of the village. Bablu leaned in, lowering his voice. Rustle by, these things, they're not just rumors. In villages, people really see them. He explained how some nights, fishermen would notice strange activity by the pond. If you left your fishing rod in the water, suddenly the bamboo stick would dip, like something had taken the bait. But when you ran to check, there was nothing. If you waited quietly and whispered a few words, the rod would lift again on its own, as if someone unseen was playing with you. The trees that held secrets. The area was thick with trees, coconut palms, date trees, and one old tall palm tree. My grandmother often told stories about that place. Long ago, that tree suddenly dried up and split down the middle, as though struck by something unnatural. Villagers whispered that it was the home of the Langra Shaitan, the limping devil. According to local lore, my mother's grandfather, Jaban Ali Mondal, a respected village leader, known for his influence, once confronted this presence. They say he struck it so hard that the entity became crippled. From then on, the spirit haunted the area, limping, broken, yet still lingering near the ruined palm. Whether truth or legend, no one dared pass that spot alone after dusk. The legacy of fear. Rustle by, Bablu said. These are the stories we grew up hearing from our elders. Some we saw with our own eyes, others were passed down. But in our village, everyone knows. The pond, the trees, the ruined palm. They all carry shadows from another world. The winter gathering. It must have been the year 2015 or 2017, around that time. All of us had gone to Nanyabari during the winter holidays to enjoy freshly made pitha. The whole family was there. That night, around 11 p.m., my mother, grandmother, and some of the aunties went out toward the Paskimpur side to collect some things. One of my uncles went with them. As they were returning, the path grew darker and quieter. That road ran near the graveyard, where palm and date trees loomed, their shadows swaying. The cats cry. Suddenly, from behind them, a sound echoed. A cat's cry. At first, it seemed ordinary, but my grandmother stiffened. She whispered, "Don't look back. Whatever it is, don't turn your head. Things live in the graveyard. Things we shouldn't see." Even my uncle warned, "Sister, keep walking straight. Don't stop. Don't turn." The whole group hurried on, hearts racing, ignoring the sound that trailed them. They all swore later, it may have been more than just a cat. The smell of death. On another night, close to midnight, they were cooking meat in the house. Out of nowhere, an awful smell swept in. The same stench of decay and burning hide that Bablu had described before. It drifted through the rooms, heavy and unnatural, though nothing outside was burning. Everyone froze. The elders knew what it meant. The smell was a sign. A presence was near. The smell of flesh. My mother said that on certain nights, a strange odor would drift from that path near the pond. It wasn't the smell of flowers or soil after rain. No, this was heavier, disturbing. Smelled like raw meat, goat or sheep. Sometimes like burning flesh. That night, my mother nearly fainted from the stench. My uncle had to run out to help her back inside. The oddest part? There had been a fish bazaar going on nearby, but the smell didn't come from there. Villagers said this odor was common on that path. Something unseen lingered there. The call from behind. Another time, my mother was walking along the narrow dirt road at Nanyabari. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice. Her neighbor, a woman from their lane, calling her name from behind. Thinking it was truly her, my mother turned around. But there was no one there. It was dusk, just before the Maghrib Azan, when such things are said to be strongest. She hurried home, shaken, and told everyone what had happened. The listener's note. And that, Russell By, was today's collection of small but very real incidents from our Nanyabari. They may seem minor, but I swear, they are true. I don't know if my recording will be selected, but if it is, I'll be so encouraged. Because there are many more stories, from my uncles and cousins, still waiting to be told. Inshallah, if you like this one, I'll send the next. The listener's closing words. Asterisk Inshallah, Russell By, I'll send you more stories in the future. I only hope that this one gets released on bhutfm.com. I don't know how much the listeners will like it, since these are just small incidents, but every one of them is true. If it is selected, please reply to let me know. And if my words carry a bit of local accent, I ask everyone's forgiveness. So that's it, Russell By. Thank you. May you stay well, and may all the listeners stay well too. Allah Hafez. Asterisk. Music fades in briefly. The next story begins. Asterisk. Assalamu alaikum, Russell By and dear listeners. I hope all of you are doing well and staying healthy. I am MD Sifat Alam, speaking as one of the moderators from Chattagram. Today I've brought you a new story. This is a hospital-related incident, something that happened about 50 to 60 years ago. I collected this story from a close friend of mine, and I will share it exactly as he told me. His name is Saqib. So now, let's hear the story in his words. Asterisk. Saqib's story. The hospital morgue. Asterisk. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Saqib. Today I want to share with you a story from a hospital, more specifically, from its morgue. I'm a regular listener of bhut.com, and I noticed that people especially enjoy hospital-related stories. Since I personally know of such an incident, I thought, why not share it? Normally, because of busy schedules, we don't always get the chance. But today, I've decided to tell it exactly as I heard it. Asterisk. The setting. Asterisk. The story takes place around 60 years ago, long before Bangladesh was born, during the Pakistan era. Back then, the place was most likely somewhere near Islamabad. In that city, there was a hospital, an ordinary hospital by day, but one that would become the setting of something extraordinary at night. Asterisk. The police arrival. Asterisk. One night, something unusual happened there. The local police arrived, carrying with them a case that would shake the entire hospital staff. They entered the morgue, and that is where the terrifying incident began. Asterisk. The watchman's testimony. The hospital's night watchman later told police. Asterisk. When I went near the autopsy room, I froze. The entire floor was slick with blood, the walls stained red. Inside the room lay the lifeless body of Dr. Abir, one of the junior doctors who had recently joined. Beside him, his senior, Dr. Nahar, was still alive but gravely wounded, bleeding and gasping for air. Somehow, I managed to drag him back into the main hospital and call for help. After receiving first aid, he stabilized enough to speak. And from him, we learned what had actually happened inside that room. Asterisk. Who was Dr. Abir? Dr. Abir's story began far from this hospital. He was born into a poor family, struggling even for daily meals. Misfortune struck early. When Abir was only 7 or 8, both his mother and father passed away. Their family had already been on the edge of poverty, and losing his father, the sole breadwinner, pushed them into complete despair. From that day on, Abir's life was shaped by hardship. Yet he persevered, studied against all odds, and eventually earned a place in medical school. To his colleagues, he seemed quiet, reserved, perhaps carrying the weight of that tragic childhood everywhere he went. But no one could have guessed that his end would come in the very place where he sought to save lives. A mother's resolve. When Abir's father died, it felt as if the sky itself had collapsed on his mother's shoulders. She had nothing left, no savings, no property, no other source of support. But she had one thing, her son. She told herself, I may not have wealth, but I'll do whatever it takes. If I must scrub floors, wash dishes, or work in other people's homes, I will. but my son will grow into someone respected. And so she did. With trembling hands but a determined heart, she enrolled Abir into one of the most reputable schools in the area, a school far beyond their means. Every month, she paid the fees by working in strangers' houses as a maid. The neighbors doubt, but people around her doubted. What's the use of sending your boy to such an expensive school? You have no husband, no income. You alone can't run this family. Better let him work somewhere. At least he can bring in money. But Abir's mother never gave in. She would smile softly, hide the blisters on her hands, and reply, "No, my son will not waste his future. Whatever sacrifice I must make, I will not let him fall into the same cycle of poverty." The weight of dreams. Abir grew up watching this. He saw his mother's sleepless nights, her tired body, her silent tears after long hours of labor. And in his heart, he made a vow. "I will become a doctor. I will change my mother's life." That vow became his fuel, pushing him through hardship, ridicule, and hunger, until finally, years later, he earned the white coat of a doctor. No one knew, however, that his journey, marked by sacrifice and hope, would end in blood and horror within the morgue's walls. A mother's resolve. When Abir's father died, it felt as if the sky itself had collapsed on his mother's shoulders. She had nothing left, no savings, no property, no other source of support. But she had one thing, her son. She told herself, "I may not have wealth, but I'll do whatever it takes. If I must scrub floors, wash dishes, or work in other people's homes, I will. But my son will grow into someone respected." And so she did. With trembling hands but a determined heart, she enrolled Abir into one of the most reputable schools in the area, a school far beyond their means. Every month, she paid the fees by working in strangers' houses as a maid. The neighbors doubt, but people around her doubted. What's the use of sending your boy to such an expensive school? You have no husband, no income. You alone can't run this family. Better let him work somewhere. At least he can bring in money. But Abir's mother never gave in. She would smile softly, hide the blisters on her hands, and reply, "No, my son will not waste his future. Whatever sacrifice I must make, I will not let him fall into the same cycle of poverty." The weight of dreams. Abir grew up watching this. He saw his mother's sleepless nights, her tired body, her silent tears after long hours of labor. And in his heart, he made a vow. "I will become a doctor. I will change my mother's life." That vow became his fuel, pushing him through hardship, ridicule, and hunger, until finally, years later, he earned the white coat of a doctor. No one knew, however, that his journey, marked by sacrifice and hope, would end in blood and horror within the morgue's walls. A mother's lessons. Abir's mother didn't just raise him with food and shelter. She raised him with values. Every day she reminded him, always help people, never speak rudely, never wrong anyone. If you can't give wealth, at least give respect. That is what makes a man truly great. Abir listened. He was a quiet, obedient boy, and whatever his mother said, he followed as if it were scripture. The road of education. Years passed. Abir finished school with steady grades. His SSC exams went well, and after securing admission into a good college, he again pushed through with diligence and sacrifice. Finally came the dream step, the medical admission test. Back then, there was no internet, no instant online results. Students had to go directly to the campus notice boards, search for their names among hundreds, and return home with the news. The day of the result. On the day results were announced, Abir left home at dawn, his heart pounding with fear and hope. Hours later, as dusk fell, he came running back home. Bursting through the door, he shouted with all the excitement a son could hold in his chest. "Amma, Amma, I got in. I've been selected for medical college." His mother dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Years of sacrifice, humiliation, and hard labor had finally borne fruit. That night, their small, dimly lit home glowed brighter than any palace. Abir had fulfilled his vow. He was on his way to becoming a doctor, But no one knew that years later, in the silence of a hospital morgue, Abir's name would once again be whispered, this time in fear, the hug of a lifetime. That day, when Abir returned home, he ran straight into his mother's arms. Tears welled up in his eyes as he cried out, "Ma, all your years of suffering. Today they paid off." His mother, startled but hopeful, asked softly, "What happened, Abir? Did you get in?" Abir's voice trembled with joy. "Yes, Amma, I got into medical college. Inshallah, in a few years I'll come out as a doctor." His mother's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, her heart felt light. Dreams realized. Abir studied with unwavering dedication. Year after year, exam after exam, he pushed forward, never forgetting the sacrifices his mother made. Finally came the ultimate day, his final results. Once again, he returned home, holding his mother tightly. "Ma, today I am truly a doctor." His mother broke down, whispering prayers of gratitude. Every hardship, every tear, every insult she had borne, it all felt worth it. A new beginning. But Abir had even more news. "Ma, I've not only become a doctor, I've also been given a job. My salary will be 12 to 13,000 taka. Back then, that was a fortune. For a poor widow who once scrubbed floors to feed her child, it was beyond her imagination. She thought to herself, now I can finally rest. My son will carry the burdens of this life. For her, it was the end of suffering. But for Abir, it was the beginning of a nightmare, the value of a dream. At that time, 12,000 taka was no small amount. It was like holding today's fortune in one's hands. For Abir's mother, who had spent years scrubbing floors and washing dishes just to earn a few hundred, this was unthinkable. Her son wasn't just a doctor now. He was a man of status, someone the world would respect. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she whispered, "So much salary, Ya Allah. This is more than I ever dreamed for you." But Abir only smiled. "This is just the beginning, Ma. Soon, I'll do even better." The posting. Still, her heart trembled when she asked, "But son, where have they posted you?" Abir lowered his voice, almost casually. "They've placed me in the morgue, Ma. My duty will be autopsies, cutting open the dead to find out the cause of their deaths." Her blood ran cold. "Autopsy? Cutting dead bodies? At night?" she stammered. Abir tried to reassure her. "It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just science. Someone has to do it. If I don't, how will families know the truth behind a death?" But his mother felt an unease she could not explain. A whisper inside her wanted to beg him to refuse, to run. She opened her mouth to say something, but Abir cut her off with a soft laugh. "Later, Ma. First, feed me. I'm starving. We can talk after dinner." A mother's silence. That night, as they sat eating in the dim glow of the lantern, she tried again to speak, but every time the words reached her lips, they seemed to dissolve into silence. Abir, exhausted and proud, only smiled and said, "Don't worry, Ma. Your son is strong." She forced a smile back, hiding her fear. But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that the morgue would soon demand a price far greater than her sacrifices. The first night, Abir smiled at his mother's worried face. "Ma, don't worry so much. Thousands of people work jobs. And think, after all your years of suffering, this is my chance to take care of you. From now on, you won't lift a finger. I've already said yes to the job." She wanted to protest again, but his determination left her silent. That night, after dinner, Abir told her, "Tomorrow I start my night shift. My duty begins at 10 o'clock. Tonight, let me rest a bit. Wake me before 10, so I can get ready." A mother's unease. The next evening, around 9:30 p.m., his mother gently shook him awake. "Abir, it's time." He stretched, yawned, and asked, "Has the hospital car arrived yet?" Back then, the hospital would send out a vehicle to pick up staff, especially doctors on night duty. It was a routine practice, but for Abir's mother, The sound of that car outside their home felt like the toll of a bell she did not want to hear. The departure. Abir quickly washed up, changed into his freshly pressed clothes, and stood before his mother. He looked proud, confident, but also strangely fragile in her eyes. Before stepping out, he held her hand and said, "Pray for me, Ma. Tonight is the first of many nights. Inshallah, I'll do well." His mother forced a smile, pressing her hand on his head. "Allah protect you, my son." The car horn honked outside. Abir picked up his bag, turned, and walked out the door. His mother stood frozen, watching as the vehicle disappeared into the night. She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a nightmare. The lonely walk. That night, the rain showed no mercy. Thunder rolled across the sky, and water rushed through the narrow streets. The hospital car never came. "Strange. They always send it," his mother muttered, pacing by the door. Abir, already restless, grew impatient. "If I'm late on my very first day, my boss won't forgive me. I can't risk it." He grabbed an umbrella, tightened his coat, and stepped out into the storm. Each drop of rain hit like cold needles. The road was nearly deserted. Rickshaws and cars had vanished from the flooded streets. Footsteps in the rain. At first, it was only the sound of his own shoes slapping against the wet pavement. But soon, beneath the drumming of rain, Abir felt it. Another set of footsteps. He froze, turned his head. Nothing, just the shifting shadows of trees bending in the wind. He tried to shake it off. "I'm just nervous. First day jitters, that's all." But then again, splash, splash, splash. Clear, deliberate steps matching his pace. Abir's heart pounded. A bitter thought. Clutching his umbrella tighter, he whispered angrily to himself, "After all these years of struggle, this is my fate? Studying day and night, only to end up in the morgue. Walking alone in the rain, chased by shadows." Lightning split the sky. For a moment, the whole street lit up, empty, silent. But as the darkness closed in again, Abir couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was trailing him. And the morgue was still a long way ahead. The first night inside the morgue. Abir wiped the rain off his glasses and stepped through the heavy doors of the hospital. The corridor smelled of damp walls and disinfectant. A dim yellow bulb flickered above his head as if reluctant to burn through the stormy night. At the end of the hall, the morgue awaited, silent, cold, and unsettling. Inside stood Dr. Nahar, the senior pathologist. His white coat looked older than him, stained with the ghosts of past autopsies. Nahar gave Abir a tired glance, his eyes shadowed by years of working with the dead. "So, you're the new recruit, Abir, right?" "Yes, sir," Abir replied quickly, bowing his head out of respect. You've chosen a difficult path, son. The living are easier to deal with than the dead," Nahar muttered, almost to himself. Abir forced a smile. "My mother always said, no work is small if it helps people. Even the dead deserve justice." Nahar gave a faint smirk. "We'll see if you can keep that spirit." A haunting atmosphere. The morgue's main chamber was a wide, echoing hall. Steel tables lined the room, each draped with white sheets. The hum of a generator and the occasional drip of water from a leaking pipe filled the silence. As Abir looked around, the hairs on his neck rose. He could swear one of the sheets moved slightly, just a ripple as though someone underneath shifted. He blinked, shook his head, and told himself it was the draft from the broken window. Nahar handed him a pair of gloves. "Come. Tonight we begin with a young man brought in after an accident. Simple case." But as Abir pulled on the gloves, he couldn't shake the echo of those phantom footsteps that had followed him through the rain. For some reason, the morgue felt as though whoever or whatever it was had arrived here before him. The morgue encounter. Abir finally stepped into the autopsy room, but the moment he pushed the heavy door open, he froze. His chest tightened and an involuntary scream escaped his throat. Dr. Nahar turned sharply, frowning. "What's the matter, Dr. Abir? You've passed medical school and yet you scream like this? Haven't you seen a corpse before?" Abir's voice trembled. Yes, sir. I've seen bodies before, but never like this one. Curious, Nahar walked over with a tired expression. A body is a body, doctor. Some are worse than others. Look around, you'll see cases far more horrific than this. You'd better get used to it. But Abir couldn't take his eyes off the body laid out before him. It was the mutilated corpse of a man. His chest and abdomen were riddled with stab wounds, torn open in places. The skull was crushed, as though someone had beaten it with a heavy stone. One eye dangled grotesquely from its socket, while pieces of brain tissue clung loosely to the side of his fractured head. His jaw was shattered, his bones twisted. Nahar's voice echoed through the dim, blood-stained room. This one is yours. You'll perform the autopsy. My shift is over. I'll be in my cabin. Abir turned to him, almost pleading. Sir, could you stay here just this once? It's my first night and something feels wrong. I don't know why, but I can't shake the feeling. Nahar waved dismissively, his tone sharp. A doctor must learn to stand alone with the dead. Get to work. And with that, he left Abir alone in the morgue, face to face with the mutilated body. Alone with the dead. Dr. Nahar gave a dry laugh. No need to panic. I'll be in my cabin. Just finish your autopsy, then we'll have tea or coffee together. With that, he walked away, leaving Abir alone with the body. Taking a deep breath, Abir steadied his trembling hands and began the autopsy. The sharp scalpel sliced through flesh, and suddenly, from the chest cavity, thick black clotted blood spurted upward, splattering across his coat and face. The stench was overwhelming. Abir hurried to the sink, splashing water on his face. He looked into the cracked mirror above the basin and froze. In the reflection, the corpse on the table behind him was sitting upright, staring blankly. Abir spun around in terror. The body lay still, lifeless, exactly as before. His heart pounded. Maybe I'm just nervous. First night jitters, he whispered to himself. Trying to focus, he returned to the body, his gloves trembling against the cold skin. The sound from the morgue. Minutes passed. Then Abir's ears caught something. An awful sound drifting from the adjacent morgue storage room. Crunch, crunch. It was the sound of bones splintering, flesh being chewed, like a starving beast gnawing on raw meat. Abir's throat went dry. With every ounce of courage he had, he stepped toward the door and pulled it open. The dim light flickered. What he saw inside made his blood run cold. Dozens of corpses, those meant to be resting silently on slabs, were now standing upright. Their pale faces hung forward, their bodies stiff, lifeless yet impossibly upright, as though waiting for him. The feast of the dead. Inside the morgue, Abir's eyes widened in sheer horror. The corpses weren't just standing. They were eating. One tore flesh from another's arm, ripping it away with jagged teeth. Another dug its fingers into a skull, pulling free chunks of rotting brain. The sound was unbearable. Wet, slurping, tearing noises echoing in the blood-soaked chamber. And then, as if in unison, every one of them turned to look at Abir. Their mouths stretched into grotesque grins. Grins far too wide, filled with rotten teeth and dripping flesh. Abir let out a scream so loud it rattled the steel tables. He stumbled backwards, crawling on hands and knees, scrambling desperately toward the autopsy room door. His fingers clawed at the handle, locked from the outside. No, 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 he shrieked, banging his fists against the cold metal. The sound of feet dragging closer filled the room. He collapsed into the corner, clutching his ears, eyes squeezed shut, muttering prayers under his breath. The gnawing sounds drew nearer, until silence. Abir opened his eyes. The room was empty. The corpses lay still on their slabs, unmoved. The mutilated body on his table rested exactly where it had been. Breathing heavily, Abir staggered to the sink, splashing water over his pale face. Maybe I imagined it. First night stress. That's all. He picked up his scalpel again. Hands trembling, he bent once more over the cadaver. The grip of the dead.
Moments later, Abir frosa.
Something cold, something unseen pressed against his throat. His eyes darted down. The corpse on the table had moved. Its decayed hand was wrapped around his neck, squeezing. Its jaw, broken and twisted, stretched into an unnatural grin. And then, before Abir's horrified eyes, the cadaver tore a strip of flesh from its own arm and stuffed it into its mouth, chewing noisily. Abir screamed so loud his voice cracked. The door burst open. Dr. Nahar rushed in. "Abir, what's happening? Why are you screaming like this?" But as his gaze swept toward the morgue chamber, the color drained from his face. He staggered back, his eyes wide in disbelief. Every single corpse inside the room, every body that had been neatly laid on the tables, was now ripped apart. Mangled, shredded, arms hacked open, skulls smashed in. Pools of blood and lumps of flesh splattered across the floor. Shattered bones lay scattered like broken glass. It was as if some deranged butcher had torn through them all in a frenzy. Dr. Nahar's voice trembled. "Abir, what have you done?" Abir shook his head violently, tears streaking down his face.
No.
"No, sir. I didn't do this. I swear I didn't. I don't know what's happening. This isn't me." The reek of blood filled the air. Both men stood frozen in that nightmare, unable to comprehend if what they were seeing was real or something far, far darker. The butcher's hands. "What is this, Abir? What happened here?" Dr. Nahar's voice shook with rage and disbelief. Abir clutched his head, trembling, and poured out everything. The visions, the corpses moving, the choking grip, the flesh tearing. His words tumbled out in panic. Nahar stared at him coldly. "I've worked here for years, decades. Nothing like this has ever happened to me. Do you think I'm a fool? These bodies, you destroyed them. You're responsible. How will we conduct autopsies now?" His accusations grew sharper, his tone harsher. But then, he noticed something. Abir's face. It wasn't the face of a frightened young doctor anymore. A twisted grin crept across his lips. His eyes darkened, gleaming with a hunger that wasn't human. Nahar took a step back. "Abir, what are you?" Abir's voice dropped, low and guttural. "You think you can teach me how this job works? No, doctor. Tonight," his grin widened, "I'll perform an autopsy on you." Before Nahar could react, Abir lunged forward with unnatural strength, slamming him onto the steel stretcher. The instruments clattered around them. "Abir, stop this madness!" Nahar screamed, thrashing, but Abir pinned him down with terrifying force, his strength far beyond normal. He seized the scalpel. With one violent slash, he drove it deep across Nahar's chest. Flesh split open, ribs glistened white beneath torn muscle. Blood sprayed across the stainless steel as Nahar's scream echoed through the morgue. "Help! Someone, help me!" Nahar's cries were hoarse, desperate. The watchman, hearing the commotion, sprinted in and froze. Before his eyes, Dr. Abir stood over his colleague, grinning like a man possessed, blood dripping from his hands. The last cut. Dr. Abir leaned over the stretcher like a butcher, slicing across Dr. Nahar's chest. With steady, horrifying precision, he peeled strips of skin from Nahar's abdomen, then stuffed them back into his chest cavity as if stitching together some grotesque experiment. Nahar's eyes widened in terror. His voice broke into a scream. "Sir, what are you doing?" Summoning what little strength he had left, he shoved Abir hard. Abir stumbled backward, the scalpel clattering against the metal tray. Nahar tumbled off the stretcher, blood pouring from his chest. He staggered toward the inner corridor, each step weaker than the last, until finally he collapsed, unconscious, drained by the massive loss of blood. The watchman, trembling, whispered desperate prayers under his breath. His voice cracked as he recited holy verses, then blew the words toward Abir like a desperate plea for mercy. In that moment, Abir froze. His grin twisted. His hand gripped the scalpel tightly. Then, with a single savage motion, he slashed it across his own throat. The blade cut deep, tearing through flesh. Blood poured down his chest as he collapsed lifeless onto the cold morgue floor. The watchman's knees buckled. But there was no time for fear. He rushed to Dr. Nahar's side, dragging his broken body through the dim hallways, shouting for help. Finally, in the operating theater, a team of doctors worked frantically for 6 or 7 hours. Nahar's ribs were shattered, his bones fractured in several places, as though a beer had struck him with some monstrous force. Somehow, by sheer will or divine mercy, Nahar survived the night. But no one could ever explain what had truly taken hold of Dr. Abir in that morgue. Aftermath of the morgue. For 6 or 7 days, Dr. Nahar drifted between life and death. He lay unconscious, his body broken, his chest scarred from Abir's scalpel. When at last he opened his eyes, he told everyone the same story. The visions, the corpses rising, the laughter, and how Dr. Abir turned into something inhuman before their very eyes. The doctors, the staff, even the police, all listened in stunned silence. Investigations followed. They uncovered pieces of Abir's past. His father had died when he was just a boy. His family lived in poverty, and his mother had struggled alone to raise him. Beyond that, nothing explained the madness that had taken him in the morgue that night. But one thing was certain, the hospital itself was never the same again. Strange occurrences continued. People spoke of whispers in the hallways, shadows moving across locked doors, and the echo of footsteps in the autopsy room long after it was abandoned. Fear spread so deeply that the building was finally declared haunted and permanently shut down. The hospital was shifted to another location. From that day on, no such incidents were ever reported again. Whether that old morgue still stands today, no one really knows. And that was the story. So, dear listeners, this was Saki's account of a forgotten hospital horror. To Saki, thank you for sharing it with us. And to everyone listening, thank you for staying with me till the end. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, the night hides more than you think.